We're so excited you're here in Las Vegas and joining us for this session, Keep Your Data Safe and Compliant with Google Workspace. I'm Stephanie Chan, and I focus on security product marketing. And joining me on stage today is my colleague, Kelly Anderson, and our customer, Rees Phillips from Airbus, the aerospace manufacturer headquartered in France. I'll share a quick overview of how Google Workspace helps enable safer work. Then I'll pass it over to Kelly and Rees to dive into the details on how Airbus meets their advanced security and data protections with Google Workspace. The cyber threat landscape is ever-changing, and there's been an increase in the quantity and sophistication of threats, especially with malicious actors abusing generative AI with tools such as FraudGPT and WormGPT. More and more organizations are facing even greater challenges than ever before. Take a look at these stats released this year. 76%. That's the year-over-year increase in the number of victims named on e-crime dedicated leak sites. 69% of intrusions were in finance, government, high-tech, and healthcare industries, and 68% of these intrusions began with an exploit, phishing, or stolen credentials. Now that's alarming. Don't worry, Gmail, part of the Google Workspace productivity suite that includes Google Docs, Slides, Meet, and more, is architected and built with modern threats in mind. And our email is the most secure email product for business with AI-powered threat defenses that automatically block spam, phishing, and malware. With Google Workspace, work emails and files are stored in the cloud, making them easier to protect. There are no Gmail desktop client apps to maintain and secure, no on-premise software to maintain and secure, and there are technical controls like client-side encryption to prevent even Googler and foreign government access. Google Workspace helps enable safer work with threat defenses and powerful data controls for IT and security teams, all built on a cloud-native, zero-trust architecture. These robust capabilities across our threat prevention, data protection, and digital sovereignty features help protect your data, enabling organizations of all sizes to work safely and securely, including enterprises. Recent research conducted by Forrester and published in the Total Economic Impact Report also underscores the benefits of our security features. $1.8 million in security tool savings. That's the estimated 3-year impact from enhanced security of using Google Workspace, among many other benefits in collaboration and efficiency. Now, you've heard me talk about the security benefits of Google Workspace and the findings in Forrester's research. Now, let's hear from Airbus and dive into how they meet their advanced security and data protections. Rees, Kelly, over to you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, Rees.
Hello.
Would you mind introducing yourself, giving everybody here a background on you, Airbus, and what they were considering and where you've been with Workspace?
Sure. So yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rees. I'm responsible at Airbus for everything related to change management and user adoption for the rollout of Google Workspace and the deployment or the decommissioning of Microsoft Office tools, which are the legacy tools that we're trying to replace with Workspace. At Airbus, we're a big and complex company. We have 3 divisions. We have the one that most people have heard of, which is the part that makes commercial aircraft or civil aircraft. We've got a company called Airbus Helicopters, and this might surprise you to find out that they make helicopters. And we have Airbus Defence and Space, who are doing everything from satellites to the rockets that launch those satellites into space, cybersecurity around that, and of course lots of stuff for the military. And we decided back in 2018 to embark on a journey with Google Workspace. Several reasons for that. Of course, it was about increased collaboration. It was about trying to improve our productivity and break out of some old and bad habits along the way. But of course, security was also one of the reasons that we took into account when we were making that decision. We made first the decision to go to the cloud, and then we had to decide, okay, if we're going to migrate from on-premise to the cloud, which productivity suite do we go with? And security was one of the factors in our decision.
Dave, can we go back a slide, please? So, Rees, what were some of the challenges that Airbus was facing when they were considering Workspace?
Yeah, so Airbus is, I think you mentioned headquartered in France, but that means we're based in the EU. And for those who aren't familiar, the EU has some very specific regulations when it comes to certain data types. I mentioned that we have these 3 different parts of Airbus. So we make civil products for aeroplanes for United and Air France and airlines like that. But we also make military aircraft. And if some part is going to go on a military aircraft, or even if it's originally designed for a civil aircraft but might later appear on a military aircraft, it's export controlled, and the export control regulations are very, very specific for that. So there's strict rules on how and where we can store it, for example. Now, before Workspace, we had on-premise solutions, so we stored data on our own servers, and that was pretty difficult when it came to access controls, and access control is really a big part of the regulations. We also had no easy way to label and tag our data, and it was difficult to encrypt the data as well. I mean, not technically difficult, but from a user experience point of view, it was complicated. And what we found was that there were lots of rules that technically were in place, written in a policy somewhere, but they weren't always being followed correctly by our teams. Sometimes because of a lack of understanding, sometimes just because they were so difficult to get it right. So by moving to Workspace, we saw some benefits. It's cloud only, right? So that means, as was already highlighted, it's specifically quite resilient to things like ransomware attacks. And it also comes with a whole load of additional monitoring in the admin console. That means that we have our security operations center have real-time alerts if something might be going wrong. But there was also a cultural element. By changing tool set, we found that this really inspired people to change their ways of working, and that's actually helping us to now foster a culture of security and data compliance.
So I know you started to touch on this about some of your different security and sovereignty challenges. One of them you mentioned was data tagging. How did you solve some of those security and digital sovereignty challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like pretty much any system, you have the 3 Ps, right? You've got people, processes, and tools. That's 2 Ps and a T. I don't know why I said it was 3 Ps. People, processes, and tools. So I will come back to the tools in a moment, I guess, because that's probably fairly clear. But if we think about the processes, the first approach we took was for people handling that kind of data, people who have to handle military data or some export control data, that they should live in 2 worlds. So we wanted them to benefit from the collaboration of Workspace, but we knew that some of that data would be difficult to put into Workspace and meet the regulations. So the first approach was, well, they live in 2 worlds. They have 2 email addresses, one in an on-premise Exchange account, one in Gmail. They have a set of on-premise editors, and they have the Google Workspace editors. And depending on what they're doing, what task they're doing, they choose the right environment. But this didn't really work very well. For a start, it's very challenging for them. They had to check 2 mailboxes. They had to remember which place they should be putting the data. And actually, there's a risk there that at some point they make a mistake, right? They're trying to multitask, and they go and put that data that's not allowed in the cloud into the cloud because they've got these 2 environments. So now what we're trying to do is actually find ways to be compliant so that we can put most of that data in the cloud. Now, we won't get all of it in there. Some of it absolutely can't go in the cloud. But we think that we can increase the amount of data and still be compliant with the regulations. So we're going through line by line the different regulations to try to understand what do we need to put in place? That might be, for example, a process to recertify the access to shared drives on an annual basis, so that once a year, if you've got a shared drive with export control data inside, you get an email saying, okay, you're the manager of this drive. Now you need to double check that the people who are inside the drive are really meant to have access to that data. And if you haven't filled in this form to say you've done the certification, that drive is going to be blocked in 30 days or something like this. It might be putting a process in place that you have to request a dedicated shared drive through a kind of a technical service process in order to store that data, because there's a regulation that says certain types of data can never be stored in the same place as other types of data. So it's not that the tools aren't there, it's just that we need to optimize the way that we use them and put some processes in place behind the scenes.
So you mentioned the 3 Ps, and you mentioned process being one of them, and you've been talking about it. Are there any features in Workspace that you were using to achieve your desired outcomes?
Yes, so there's quite a lot. We're using trust rules to ensure that people who can access are the people who are meant to access things, and importantly, can they access it from the right device? Who can it be shared with? We're using DLP rules to, for example, block certain functionalities. So if a file is tagged as being a particular type of sensitivity, viewers and commenters won't be able to print, download, or copy that file. Client-side encryption was mentioned earlier. We're currently using that in Drive, in Docs, in Meet, and in Calendar, and we'll be rolling that out to Gmail at some point next year. We've got data sharding in place to make sure that none of our files are stored in one place on any of the Google servers, so that kind of protects us even if there was a physical raid on a server on Google side. We're using data regionalization. That means that any data that is from an EU user stays within the EU. We've of course got two-factor authentication in there, and we're using tagging in both Gmail and Drive as well to be compliant. So we're using a lot of the features that are native to Google Workspace.
So since you are using a lot of our features, very experienced Workspace user, what are some of the learnings that you can share with your peers? Maybe some things that you wish you would have known sooner or done differently?
Yeah, so we've discussed processes and we've discussed tools. So the last one for me is people, and this is where, for me, my role in change management and user adoption really comes in, because you need to really bring people on a journey with you. If you just say you need to follow these rules because that's what security say, well, some people will do it, and some people will never get around to doing it. So it's really, really important that they understand not just how to do it and that your process is simple to follow, because if you make it over complex, they'll find workarounds, but also that they understand why. You need to make sure that everyone understands, why is this important for Airbus? Why is this important for me? Why is it important for my colleagues that I do this right to protect the company and protect our data? And I think you also need to make sure that those processes and the tools are intuitive, because if you and you have to get the balance right between protecting your data and having the right user experience. If you go all in one direction and say we put all of these things in place to block X, Y, Z because that protects our data, you won't really protect the data, because someone will find a workaround, because they say, well, I need to get that data out of there to this place, so they'll find a workaround. I mean, we've recently blocked WeTransfer, for example, because we saw that there were people, even though there was a policy saying you can't use it, we saw that people were using it. We asked them why they were using it. It's because it was the easiest way to do it, and we've now put in place a compliant way to share data outside of the company, using Google Drive and visitor sharing and PIN codes in order to give them a compliant and user-friendly alternative, so that we can move away from them using WeTransfer, which wasn't secure for us. So people will find workarounds.
And since you mentioned you're already using a bunch of our features, are there any new features that you're currently implementing or that you're very excited about?
Yeah, well, I know that I think later this afternoon there's a session around where they're going to show a little bit of information on the updated version of Gmail classification labels. We're really looking forward to seeing that. We use heavily the classification labels in Google Drive, and the interface in Gmail is a bit different. It doesn't quite work in the same way, and we're looking forward to seeing that being harmonized and the improvements that are going to come with that. Also, the opportunity to add some more granularity into some of those labels is actually necessary for us when it comes to being compliant with the export control regulations. I've already mentioned that client-side encryption, we've got it everywhere except Gmail up until now, and that's mostly for historical reasons. We couldn't wait for CSE and Gmail, so we deployed a third-party solution, and we'll migrate it next year. And we are just starting first discussions with the Google Chat product team, because actually we could do with having client-side encryption on Google Chat, because right now, for those very sensitive discussions, we've encouraged people to change their ways of working and embrace using chat instead of email for everything, but there's certain discussions which, purely from a data compliance point of view, have to be double encrypted, and they can't do that in chat right now. So we're looking forward to working closely with Google product teams to make that happen soon.
Good stuff. Thank you, Rees, so much for your time. And as we conclude our session today, we want to leave you with some resources to help you get started with security and digital sovereignty. We have Workspace and their customer story about how they're using the different capabilities that Rees mentioned. We also have a Forrester economic report where we talk about the actual tangible benefits of using security and sovereignty for your organization. And then we have all of our security sessions, and then even another session that Rees is speaking at. So if you want to continue to hear about Airbus's story and journey, we highly encourage you to go to that. And with that, we thank all of you so much for coming to our session, and please join me in giving Rees a huge round of applause, and enjoy your time at Next.